I've wanted to make a video talking about the 2025 NBA draft for a couple weeks now, especially after I made a video talking about Cooper Flagg back in August. I'm going to preface what I'm about to say in this video by just saying I think Cooper Flagg will be a great player and have a long career, but the generational label being placed on him was and still is crazy. There's only a handful of players ever who had such high expectations placed on them prior to entering the NBA and lived up to them, and that's like LeBron James, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Hakeem Olajuwon, and even Tim Duncan as well. Even Michael Jordan and his talent was questioned by NBA executives at the time when he was drafted, and I'm not saying that to put down Michael Jordan, his skill, or his accomplishments at both UNC or in the NBA, but I'm saying that because if even Michael Jordan wasn't looked at as generational when he was entering the league, then I think we need to slow down with just throwing that label on players. Cooper Flagg will be good, and he's still going to be the first overall pick, but it feels like the hype around him has gotten way too high. The most divisive comparison I've seen with Flagg lately is comparing him to Jayson Tatum. I don't really feel any type of way about the comparison, but Tatum was a better shooter at Duke than Flagg is and finished his only season at Duke with 34.2% shooting from downtown. And only to be fair to Flagg, if we look at Tatum's first 11 games at Duke, since that's all that Flagg has played, he was shooting 30%, but that is still better than Flagg's 22% from deep so far. Flagg's defense has been focused on, and I think most people feel he's going to be a better defender than Tatum is, and he's looked very good defensively so far. But I'm just saying, Tatum averaged more steals and blocks than Flagg through both of their first 11 games, even though it wasn't much more. So while I think Flagg will be good, those comparisons might need to come to an end soon. I think it is important to note that Tatum was 18 for most of his tenure at Duke and then turned 19 in March, and Cooper Flagg started the year at 17 years old and will turn 18 on December 21st. Tatum and Flagg do have a lot in common, but I will say I think Pistons Blake Griffin might be a better comparison just in terms of how they look on the court, and you'll probably be getting a better version of that Pistons Blake Griffin. And listen, you can always develop a jump shot and improve your shooting once you get to league. Just look at Aaron Gordon's college shooting numbers versus how he shoots the three ball now, and even De'Aaron Fox also. I think the other thing is definitely needing to improve on his shot selection, and that will come with just improving his jumper. But he's been using his size a little bit too much this season to score since he's just taller than most guys in college. And 6'9" is tall, don't get me wrong, and that can aid him in the NBA, but grown men in the NBA aren't as easy to score on as you see with these young guys in college. So like I said, improving his jumper will help with just improving his shot selection, as it'll open up a lot more for him. And I think his size is definitely going to be an aid in the NBA, but he's been using it a little bit too much to bail him out so far at Duke. I think the generational label being placed on him has also taken away some attention from the Rutgers duo of Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper, who seem like locks to be top 3 draft picks. Dylan Harper I want to talk about first, and I think he's going to be a great scorer in the NBA. A lot of people have compared him to Jalen Brunson, and like I understand that comparison, and I might get heat for my comparison maybe, but to me he's just a lefty Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They're both 6'6", very crafty, and are great at creating for themselves while also being tough to stop when just getting to the rim. Harper's a better scorer than Shai was in college, but their numbers are pretty similar. And I know most people will mention how Shai didn't consistently start until the final 22 games of his career at Kentucky, or his just only season at Kentucky. But even then, Harper now is shooting better and averaging more points than Shai did. And listen, I'm not saying he's going to be Shai, but with Harper being 5 inches taller than Jalen Brunson, that's part of what makes that comparison kind of silly to me, because part of what makes Jalen Brunson so difficult to guard is how he uses his 6'1" frame to draw contact against defenders, especially when they're on his side or behind him. Speaking of fouls and foul shots, we hear so often about how people mention Shai scoring from the line, and I get it because Shai is averaging the 3rd most free throws per game in the league this season, so I get it. And to mention his other comparison, Brunson's averaging the 10th most per game in the league, but Harper's averaging more free throws than both of them did at the college level when they were 18, on top of more points per game than both of them did at the same age. And that kind of is just proof that he's further along in terms of his development than opposed to them and how they were as freshmen. And I think Harper, out of all freshmen and maybe even all upperclassmen as well, would be able to translate his game over to the pros the easiest right now and contribute the most currently on an NBA roster, as he's averaging the 3rd highest points per game in all of college and done that while making the least amount of 3-pointers of any top 6 in the points per game scoring category. Harper is phenomenal, and he just doesn't jump off the screen when you watch him in terms of athleticism and highlight plays. And in this era of casual fans just watching highlights on social media, it's understandable to see why I haven't seen as many pages post as much as they should about Harper and how good he's been this season. It also doesn't help Harper that he has quite possibly the most athletic player in all of college basketball this season starting alongside him at Rutgers, and that is Ace Bailey. Bailey has been compared to Brandon Miller, but to me, I immediately thought of pre-injury Michael Porter Jr. when I saw him, and that's not necessarily in terms of just style of play, but more just the fact that they have similar strengths and weaknesses. Bailey and Harper both play different positions, as Bailey is playing guard at Rutgers and Porter Jr., even though he only played 3 games in college, was and is a forward, but both are 6'10", and both are super athletic, and we're looked at so highly because Porter Jr. was looked at and Bailey still is looked at as a great combo forward on the pro level. But like I said, it's not style of play that drew me to that comparison between the two. Porter Jr., like I said, had the same issues that Bailey currently has, which is needing to put on some more weight and size and having to do that for when they get on the pro level. And Porter Jr. lacked the dribble moves, or should I just say dribble package, to help him get to the rim, and that's what Bailey's currently dealing with at Rutgers. Bailey is very, very good in the mid-range and a solid shooter from deep, shooting 35% from 3 this season. But with the crazy athleticism he has, I'd like to see him get easier looks at the rim, or just being able to get to the rim without having to use fast breaks as much to score. A lot of the issue with Bailey is that, while I think he's good defensively, especially when it comes to blocking shots on the weak side, I like to see him get his steals and blocks per game up a notch, and his defensive consistency is one of his biggest flaws with his game. And hey, listen, a taller guard, or just a taller 2 guard that was also a great wing defender in college, was Klay Thompson, and Bailey is averaging more steals and blocks than Klay did in his freshman season, so hopefully Bailey is fine. To me, I think Harper is the better player, and he's certainly further along in his development than Bailey is. And Bailey can go one of 2 ways for me, and this is just my opinion. This is not anybody else. I think he either could be a guy like Brandon Miller, who played extremely well so far in his second season and has really gone off since LaMelo's gotten injured, or he can be more like a Kevin Knox and just never reach his potential and kind of fade away into existence around the league. I like both Bailey and Harper. I want to see both guys succeed, but to me, Harper is definitely a lock to be the second overall pick. And while Flagg has more potential, we know what we're getting with Harper. Flagg still needs to improve on his shooting and show what his true identity would be on the NBA level. I also really like VJ Edgecombe too out of Baylor, and I think he's a tremendous defender that will thrive on the defensive side of the ball in the NBA. And I think the fact he's only averaging 11.9 points a game certainly scares me a bit in terms of how well he'll be able to translate his scoring into the pro level. And it especially kind of scares me since he's shown he can pretty much score anywhere on the floor, and he's still only averaging that points per game total. I definitely like to see him improve his ball handling and also just shooting consistency, as he's been pretty inconsistent. And I think his game against his performance against Gonzaga was really just the best example of both his strengths and weaknesses. Much how I spoke on Cooper Flagg needing to improve his shooting and how a guard like De'Aaron Fox did that in the NBA, maybe that's the route that Edgecombe can go down, since he's a guard much like Fox is. And I think that's probably the best case scenario for Edgecombe and whoever drafts him. And while Edgecombe is shooting the 3 ball similarly from downtown as Fox did in Fox's freshman season and only season at Kentucky, even Fox shot a better field goal percentage and averaged more points per game than Edgecombe has so far this season. So maybe as the season goes on, Edgecombe could at least improve those numbers a bit, and I certainly hope he does. His poor shooting is definitely one of the few reasons why most mock drafts have him going after Egor Demin out of BYU. The thing with Demin is, prior to the season, there were questions about his 3-point shooting, but now he's shooting 38.5% from downtown and has played solid for BYU. Demin is currently sidelined with a knee injury, but my biggest question with Demin when he returns is, can he put up solid numbers against top opponents, as he looked great against smaller schools, but that shooting and passing that publications like The Athletic praised him for are just non-existent when he's playing against a big team, and they were just not there in his last 3 games before the injury, which ironically enough were all against 3 big-time programs. He has a nice looking jumper, and he seemed like he has the confidence when taking those shots, but he did that against smaller schools, and like I said, I'd like to see him do it against big time opponents. I could see Demin being a solid pro. I think a top 5 pick might be a bit too high, at least with what I've seen from him now in the games that he's played so far, and I don't think Dragon Bender is like Demin or VJ Edgecombe is like Jamal Murray. But if you remember back in the 2016 draft, Dragon Bender was selected before Jamal Murray. So if we see one of those kind of situations and Demin gets selected before VJ Edgecombe, I honestly wouldn't be surprised. Obviously, it is a bit different though, as Dragon Bender didn't play in the NCAA, while of course Demin is now. So in closing, to me, I think the 2 locks, or maybe not to jinx them, just 2 most likely players to have great pro careers are Cooper Flagg and Dylan Harper, as they both showed off skill sets that will translate over nicely to the pro level. And while I talked about some of the flaws of both, they both look like they are pretty pro ready or will be able to contribute, within their first few seasons. In terms of the other 3 guys I spoke on, as of right now, I think they've all shown pretty good potential, but I definitely think we need to see more from them to get a better glimpse of how they'll be in those kind of situations on the pro level. And that's just my opinion. And they just need to show why they're ready to take that next step as pros in my eyes. Some of the flaws are more alarming than some of the others, but those flaws I went over are just my thoughts and the things that jump out to me the most and scared me the most about whether or not those three guys can have great pro careers. I want to know what you think, though, in the comments about any of the players in the upcoming NBA draft, any players' flaws you see or disagree with me on, or just anything relating to the NBA down below. Of course, if you enjoyed the video, then make sure to give it a like and subscribe if you're new to the channel, as it helps me out a lot. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I am out. Peace.